Today's episode of Fighters Drinking Coffee comes to you from the road. We were traveling en route to the Chicago Spring Open once again, same thing. But we were discussing what it was like for the women in the car getting into jiu-jitsu. It was a great conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you would like to support the show, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Fighters Drinking Coffee podcast. Enjoy the show.
Say it again.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Welcome to Fighters Drinking Coffee. So, prior to hitting record, we were discussing the after scandal. Well, not even just that. We were discussing creepy black belts and stuff like that. Because we are lucky enough to have two women here to give us their takes on being a woman in a male-dominated sport. Male-dominated training rooms, things like that. We are still on the road, so if you hear angry road rage occur outside our windows, it won't be Scott. Scott's cool, level-headed. But if you hear some shit going down, it's just other people on the road. We're on a highway, so. But we did want to talk about. I did want to talk to you guys, find out more. We don't have to talk about like weird shit if you don't want to, but I do want to know. But I do want to like get started with what it's like. I'm sure you guys have been in a training room with where you're the only woman. I know Andrea has because I've been in the training room where she's the only woman. You know what kind of challenges, roadblocks, or lack thereof, or especially when you're getting started, what that's like. So, who wants to go first? Raise your hand. Andrea, raise your hand.
Yeah, I feel like I have actually always been really fortunate in my all-male training rooms because it's like two of my most common training partners in those rooms are in the car, in the front seat right now. And so like I've had male teammates and training partners who are really good at like kind of like reading the pace of a round. And being able to give me like really good challenging looks without going insane, basically, which I don't think every woman in jiu-jitsu is necessarily lucky enough to have. But I think like the room that we've been in has been like very well controlled. It's good vibes in general. That said, I think I've been equally lucky to also make a lot of connections with other female competitors in the community. So like I get a lot of value out of like co-ed and all male training rooms. Like honestly, I think most women in jiu-jitsu have to contend with being like one of only one or two women on the mats in a lot of situations just because it is such a male-dominated sport. And like you can get a lot of value like that out of that, like if you have good male training partners. But I do think that it is very important to counterbalance that with having very skillful female training partners as well. It's harder to seek out and harder to find. But I've been really lucky. Shout out to Beatrice Jin over at Kagayan Academy, Maya Madelon over at High Noon, who both run really incredible, like all-female training rooms with a lot of really great competitors. And that's just fundamentally going to give you a different look, and it's going to give you a more realistic look for female competitors at what your own division, your own weight class is going to feel like. So it's great to scrap with the guys. I think you can learn a lot from that, but I think especially when you're like leading up to specific competitions, you're in training camp, you really benefit from having women, and specifically like women who are like within one or two weight classes of you, to just like kind of be able to give you that feel from your actual opponents.
Andrea, can I ask you a question real fast?
Yes.
Before we jump over to Kate?
Yeah.
And Kate, you can respond to this too, but I'd be curious to know if you think, if you were to like contrast, and there's a lot of ways to train in body types and that extract like versions of how we train this martial art. But
okay,
if you put, like, let's just say for the sake of conversation, two simple labels for like the women's comp, you could apply this to the men's comp too, but like, let's just say training with women, training with men. Would you say there's like a difference of like, one's like clearly more applicable for like your competition environment, and one might be more like, even if it is a comp training session, but like dudes, is it more like a self-defense? Like I got to really use a martial art differently than like a sport?
Yeah.
Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like when I'm training with male partners, it's like, I think it still has application to like a competitive setting, but it's a little bit more like entering an absolute division where you're going in with the given that like 95% of the time your training partner is just going to be like a little bigger and stronger than you, and sometimes a lot bigger and stronger than you. And you kind of have to modify your mindset and your strategy accordingly versus going into the all-female training room where you're likelier to get like a look that's more similar to your weight class division. But yeah, no, I would agree. Like, I think that like part of the value of training with like good male partners is just like getting used to dealing with somebody who just has that extra bit of physicality behind them, even when they are like holding back some of it. Like there's like, if somebody's bigger than you, there's only so much they can do to like curtail being bigger than you. And that is just like weight that you're going to have to develop the physicality yourself and the technique to carry and handle impact from. And obviously you want to limit that going like when you're kind of tapering down for an actual tournament. Like I'm probably not going to be getting a ton of rolls with like 200-pound dudes if I'm going into like the lightweight women's division of an IBJJF tournament. But you know, those looks from like bigger dudes in a more controlled setting can also be a good way of sort of building up endurance and building up like jujitsu specific strength.
Yeah, I'm also used to being the only girl in the room. There's a just fundamentally different mindset that I have when I'm rolling with guys versus when I'm rolling with women. When I'm rolling with guys, it almost feels more fun. You have to be more technical. In my mind, there's always going to be, okay, but they're a guy. If I lose this round, if I don't nail this, if I can't move them, if I can't move around them, in my brain, I'm like, oh, well, of course not. Like,
easier to make excuses for yourself.
It's really easy to make excuses. And then you step on the mat in a room full of women and you're like, okay, I should be able to perform really well here. And then it gets just so intimidating. I'm like, oh, but what if I don't?
Yeah.
Where's my cop out? And so getting on the mat at like a women's open mat or even rolling with a new woman who comes to the gym for the first time, it's really intimidating. To not know what you're stepping into, not know what their skill level is, and have to like gauge that in real time and react, which when you're getting ready for a competition is really good because you never know what's going to happen when you step on the mat and start competing, like just completely unknown.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. It's like a very different toll on your ego when you've been submitted multiple times by the like light feather female black belt world champion that you outweigh by like 10 to 20 pounds versus getting like submitted left and right by like a male black belt who's like bigger and stronger than you are. It's just like both are very humbling experiences. But like it just feels very different in that round. Like it's much easier at least in my opinion, and I think Kate agrees with me, as like a female competitor to like kind of have that excuse in the back of your mind when you're rolling with all men. It's like, oh, I'm the only girl. Like it is what it is. Like of course I'm going to get beaten up and flattened out. But when you're getting beaten up and flattened out by other women, you're like, okay, I don't really have a cop out here. There's clearly something either technically or physically that I need to fix in my game. So, yeah.
So kind of on a similar note with that like mental aspect, right? You're able to get the idea of being able to like almost excuse performance, right? Because of the difference in body type, strength, whatever, with men versus women, right? When you first stepped into jujitsu and were first trying it out, what do you think was the biggest barrier or like mental block or whatever with going into a room that was mostly men training? And like, what was it like getting into that, like getting started, stepping on the mat for the first time? If you can remember, what was going through your head?
I think it was like a physical adaptation of just getting used, frankly, to like carrying the weight of like a bigger, stronger person in such close proximity. Cause I had like grown up in traditional martial arts. So I wasn't like unfamiliar with playing like a contact sport with men, with women. But there's because most traditional martial arts involve kind of more of a striking foundation, like there's like a distance that you can keep there that isn't really present when you're full on just wrestling with somebody and engaging in a submission grappling match and getting stuck under side control for 5 minutes at a time with someone way heavier than you. And I think I was having a lot of fun with it. I was really fortunate in my experiences that I had really good training partners, who didn't just like smash me left and right without like explaining what they were doing. Like they gave me a chance to work. They helped me develop my skills so that I could actually learn. But still, like there is that physical adaptation of like, okay, like my body's not used to being crushed under this amount of weight. Like, yes, I had to develop technical skill, but honestly, like getting really into competitive jiu-jitsu was also, that coincided when I started getting really just more serious about like real strength training, because I had to like kind of armor up my joints in order to take that kind of impact in a way that I don't think was as necessary in other sports that I had played before. But yeah, I'd be interested in Kate's perspective, because you started out as a Muay Thai competitor, so take it away.
Yeah, my first jiu-jitsu class ever was actually the week that I was supposed to not be working out before my first Muay Thai fight. I was looking for something to do that would just get me moving, but I wasn't supposed to be striking that week. So I went to a noon gi class, not one of yours, unfortunately. And I walked in and I remember the coach looking at me like, what are you doing here? Like, I don't know. I think the hardest thing getting on the mat is you don't really know the end goal of jiu-jitsu. You can see people rolling and they just kind of look like they're rolling and you don't know what their goal is. So when you walk in and you start with a flow roll or something like that, you don't know the positions. You don't know what your goal is. You don't know how to do any joint locks. You don't know how to do any chokes. And so you need to find someone early on who has the patience to explain some of the basics to you. I also got super lucky there that my husband had been doing jiu-jitsu for a year before me. So even in a room full of men, I had someone who maybe was forced to take the time to explain things to me early on. But he's still one of my favorite training partners.
Was he happy that you decided to switch over to doing jiu-jitsu and that you kind of got bitten by the bug? Like, had you been pushing it for a while?
I think so. At the gym, we were very frequently ships passing in the night. I would be rolling out of Muay Thai class as he was rolling into jiu-jitsu class. But as we started both going to the same things and rolling together more, I think he's gotten a lot more excited about it. He's subscribed to BJJ Fanatics and things like that, gets all the YouTube videos coming through his recommendeds, and he'll pull me aside and be like, we need to try this right now. We have mats in our basement. We do not have cushy enough mats to practice takedowns or some of the fun judo throws that we might want to, but we have just enough space to drill the silly moves so we don't try them for the first time in a live roll and get somebody hurt.
Well, so that's actually kind of fun. I know there's a lot of, you guys are already in a relationship. I know there's a lot of controversy around like relationships on the mats and like, I know that can get weird. It sounds like it's working for you guys though, like the whole jiu-jitsu shared experience, but especially I guess since you guys have been doing it for a very similar amount of time, that you're both like experiencing like learning jiu-jitsu together. So I imagine that that makes it, and it sounds like you are, like you get to have the joy of learning together.
Yeah, and I also, in the year before I started that he was doing jiu-jitsu, there were a lot of days that I would just go and sit and watch the classes, which I do think helped me pick up the sport a little bit faster than I would have otherwise, because I'm watching them, so I know the words and the kind of positions that go along with them. I might not know how to do it, and I might not know how to chain things together yet, but when I first started, I at least had a little bit more context than maybe somebody who walks in off the street to try their first class.
Oh, I do have a question for you, speaking of which, kind of going back to like how you were in Muay Thai, he was in Jiu-Jitsu before you kind of started crossing over to the dark side over here. Muay Thai is also a male-dominated full contact combat sport. I think there are probably more women in it than there are in Jiu-Jitsu, but it is still like heavily like a tough guy sport. Have you, as like a female competitor in both disciplines, noticed any differences in mat culture in terms of gender dynamics in Muay Thai versus Jiu-Jitsu?
Maybe a little bit. They're very similar in the terms of you'll have people who are going to be good partners and you'll find your safe partners to go with in both sports. You'll either spar or roll with somebody new, and you'll learn a little bit about their mindset and decide if that's someone you want to continue to work with or not. Muay Thai, especially sparring, can feel a little bit more playful than jiu-jitsu rolling. Maybe it's because you can, kind of step in, back out, decide, like take your time. Nobody actually has their hands on you the entire time and is controlling where you are and where you can go. So with jiu-jitsu, your survival instincts kick in a little bit more. Someone's sitting on you, holding you down. I've been stuck in bottom side control for more minutes than I can count. But both of them, I think it's all about the partners that you end up with. I've definitely cut some people out of, sparring training because they aren't ready to tone things down or pick things up at a cadence that I need.
You've both mentioned like safe training partners. So what are things that you look for in your male training partners that make you feel more comfortable rolling with them? And like what kind of we will eventually get to what you don't look for, but I want to start with this. And what kind of things what can men in the sport do to make women feel more comfortable rolling with them or training with them, drilling with them? Raise your hand, whoever wants to go first.
I think honestly, like this doesn't just go for men. It goes for like, I've encountered this with other women as well. I think just like getting comfortable and confident in matching the pace of your training partner. Cause I think like men and women alike, I think we've all had that experience where like you're having like a chill round with somebody and then like they start exploding on you out of nowhere. And I think that can get kind of dangerous if like you don't see that coming. And like often it comes from somebody who's like a little bit less experienced in the sport. They don't necessarily know what they're doing. And they're panicking. So they just start going into like white belt spaz mode. But like, I think like with women, because we are often like smaller and lighter and like less physically powerful than our male training partners, it's a little bit more dangerous for us. So it's something that we might be a little bit more aware of and might clock a little earlier on. And if somebody is going to be kind of unpredictable in that way, we might just choose like to wait until they've gotten like a little bit more experience, or we might choose to like roll with them in a very specific way. I think Kate and I have both had the experience of just like holding somebody down in like closed guard or hanging onto the back for the entire round just because it's like, all right, you're going nuts. You're not going so nuts that I feel like I'm about to get injured, but you are going nuts enough that like I think I just need to like be in a safe spot here and just wait out the rest of the round. Oh, Kate, you look like you want to say something.
No, but in the middle of the round too, like I think one of the more important things with a training partner is on both sides being receptive to feedback. If you can't look at your partner and tell them you're going a little bit too hard right now, please don't do that. I have an injury, my elbow's hurt, my wrist is hurt. Please don't, throw a wrist lock on that arm, throw an arm bar on that arm. If they say okay and then proceed to immediately throw the arm bar on that arm because they know you have a weakness, not going to be a training partner I look towards again.
Yeah, my favorite is also like almost like the inverse of that when they tell you that they're hurt and like they need to go and like at a flow pace and then they immediately go balls to the wall on you. But yeah, no, I feel like we don't talk enough about like using our words in jiu-jitsu. We expect everybody to read each other's minds. And to some extent, if you're experienced, like I said earlier, you can like kind of get good at matching the pace of who you're going with. But like failing that, like you can just ask like, hey, am I going too hard? Do you want me to turn it up a little? Do you want me to dial it back? And I don't think that should be quite as much of a taboo as it seems to be sometimes.
Yeah. And I have a couple of training partners who are a good amount bigger than me who in the middle of a round, halfway through a round, if we end up with a submission and start over there, like, is the pressure too much? Am I doing okay? Anything you want me to tone down? And asking for that feedback in the middle is also helpful. There's not always a perfect opportunity for that, but when they do, I appreciate it.
Kind of a related question to this. Do you think there is such thing as like going almost too light or like light to the point where it's almost insulting?
I don't take it as insulting so much, but there is definitely a too light where they might be kind of starfishing on the floor or just letting you throw their legs around. And as somebody who trains for competition, but also for life, that's just not realistic for anything I'm going to face. There's not going to be anybody except for this one person right now doing this drill who is going to let me move them in that way. So I'm not getting anything out of it. I know that I'm not doing it the way it's quote unquote supposed to be done because I'm not getting the resistance that I would actually expect to be getting.
So question going off of that, do you feel as comfortable telling someone in that situation, like, hey, would you mind turning it up a little, as you would telling somebody who's going too hard, hey, would you mind toning it down a little?
Absolutely. I will always be like, you can give a little more resistance, like not as, maybe not being accusatory of being like, you're being a starfish. I will say that to my husband, but everybody else, I'll just ask, you could give me a little bit more resistance if you want and let them, if they're comfortable, do it. Otherwise, it is what it is. Yep. Maybe they're a little overwhelmed. Maybe they just need to work on something else. So be it. I have a lot of time on the mat. I will have more time on the mat. This 5 minutes isn't going to make or break me, hopefully.
And on the opposite side of this, you touched on it a little bit, but what are some like big red flags for training partners? This can be male or female. So, but what are some big red flags that you see in a training partner, either mid-roll or prior to a roll, when it comes to training in the jiu-jitsu room?
I think like going off what Kate and I were talking about earlier, like the biggest one is just like not taking verbal feedback. Like it's one thing if like maybe you're a little less experienced and you can't quite read the room or like the physicality of your training partner, that's not necessarily your fault. But if I verbally told you like, hey, can you please not like rip submissions like that? Can you, dial back some of your pressure, and you're still not listening and you're going just as hard as you were before, then that's a sign to me that you can't listen to basic instructions, right? And I'm going to respectfully decline that role for my own safety. I think that's like the biggest thing. Probably the second biggest thing is watching how they roll with other people. So if you see somebody who's going way too hard on other people in the training room, especially if there's like a difference in how they roll with like smaller versus bigger people, where like they're like ripping stuff on way smaller people, but being more respectful of people who are their size or bigger, it kind of tells you something about their intentions, right? And like you maybe, if you are smaller than them, you maybe don't want to get involved in that whole mess and whatever it is that they're going through. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is like, can they listen to like what I am verbally telling them? Because everything else is like somewhat negotiable, and there's a margin for error there. But if I like tell you something and you do it anyway, that tells me that you don't respect boundaries.
I think if not the biggest thing for me, but maybe the second biggest, hygiene.
Oh, yeah.
Please wash your gis. If you're doing 2 classes back to back, pack a clean rash guard, maybe wipe yourself off after. There was a little bit of a difference level in how much the guys and the girls sweat, and it becomes very apparent when you're rolling with a girl who did the class before versus a guy who did the class before, a guy who's fresh, a girl who's fresh. Wash your gis, please.
PSA.
And if you don't think anyone else smells, it's probably because you're the one that smells, by the way. Let's step a little bit back from the mats and look at the entirety of the gym, right? Like the space, the facilities. Are there things that you prefer or find draw you to specific gyms with the way that the facilities are set up or the culture surrounding it? And if so, what might those things be?
I'd say 2 of the biggest ones for me. One is you can see that there is a group of women who are there and who are there consistently. If they have a women's only class that helps get women in the door and kind of introduce them to things in a less intimidating environment, that's fantastic. But I'd say some of my closest friends now have come from the gym. I love going back to see them. You can always know that you can spend time with them both on the mats and that they'll actually be friends outside of it. And then the other is in terms of gym facilities themselves, there's not a lot of gyms that have like separate changing locker room areas for men and women. I have been to a few that have them. And when they do, it's really nice to be able to have like a door that closes and locks all the way instead of being expected to change out in the open. in an area that there's going to be all kinds of eyes on you.
Yeah, I would also say revisiting an earlier point, hygiene is a huge thing. If I don't see the mats getting like wiped down fairly regularly, that's gonna be an ick for me. I do not want a fungal infection. Thank you very much. Like, you could have the best jujitsu in the world. For me, it's not worth getting staph over. And in addition to that, I would say that I kind of look to the leadership in the room also. I think you can tell a lot about the mat culture based on how the coaches conduct themselves. So like I've been really lucky with most of the gyms that I visited in that they've been really welcoming. The coaches have had good vibes. The mat and the folks who roll there in general have had good vibes. But I've also heard stories from friends in the community who have visited gyms that were like kind of unfriendly and where like the coaches would regularly like yell at their students, and not in the like, hey, like, let's push the pace a little bit more in that like encouraging way, but where they would like literally just like dress down their adult students and start like tearing into them publicly in front of their teammates. Not cool, right? Like, so like if that's something I haven't personally witnessed, but I imagine if I did, it would make me feel uncomfortable. So like, I think like the leadership at the head of the room kind of informs the culture on the rest of the mat as well.
Like it. We had talked to the Unbreakable Jiu-Jitsu Camp, which is a jiu-jitsu camp for women. I believe both of you have met them. And so Carrie and Mindy over there, and they had talked about the culture outside of their own gym and how they've expanded and created almost a network of women within the city. And how that's actually helped a lot with both the programs at the individual gyms, the women's programs there, but also just creating like a women's jiu-jitsu culture overall that's able to kind of infiltrate and work its way into all the gyms. Would you mind telling people about the one that we have? I know there is a women's open mat and stuff like that, but you mind expanding on that women's jiu-jitsu culture in the area that we have?
Yeah, no, we are really fortunate in that we have several like world-class female black belt competitors in like the DC, Virginia area. We've got like black belt adult competitors who have medaled at major events like Maya Madelon, ADCC trials champion, Beatrice Jin, won several majors at, I believe, at adult black belt in different weight classes. We've got a bunch of like pretty heavy hitters. We got Nikki Sullivan as well, who's also like a legend in the sport. And like it helps that, again, like kind of going back to that earlier point about like leadership from the front of the room, that all of these are women who are not only like great at jujitsu, but like they're also very committed to building up the women's side of the sport. So you have a lot of like all female rooms where you have the opportunity to train with some of the most talented women currently competing. And I think as a result, like it brings up the women's programs at gyms throughout our area. Often because jiu-jitsu is a male-dominated sport, it's hard for girls at any one gym to always get the training partners that they need going into a competition to find somebody at the correct level, the correct weight class, etc. So often we do find ourselves maybe a little bit more motivated to cross-train than like some of the men in the sport, just because we want to go out and seek partners who can give us that competitive look. So like as a result, I think there is like a big cross-training culture among female jiu-jitsu athletes, especially in our area, where like we'll go to women's open mats over at Kagayan. We'll go to the high noon women's comp class because it's a chance for us to kind of like get that experience of rolling with other female competitors who can really give us a taste of what high-level competition tastes like when we hit the mats.
And the competition world for the girls is small enough that you're going to run into them and compete against them anyway. So you may as well train with them too.
Exactly.
Learn from each other.
Yeah, actually, I did see some familiar names at the tournament we're going to, by the way. So I think Danielle Gallo is actually going to be up there. So another member of the Northern Virginia DMV, DC area jiu-jitsu scene. So I mean, yeah, it's you guys are actually pretty lucky to have that many big names and like high level people in the area. It definitely makes big difference. And yeah. But so one other thing on that train of thought before we get into the dark world of jiu-jitsu. Unless you guys are ready to just get into the dark world of jiu-jitsu. But with all of these high-level female athletes in the area, we actually have like a pretty good women's like the super fight scene. I've been lucky enough to watch some of them, and they are like sometimes they're more exciting than the men's matches. Specifically, the NGA when
Tag
they had
team
all those
NGA.
tag team NGA. Yeah,
I'll never forget it, man. That was amazing.
that's still like a highlight. Do you guys have any insights or maybe even call outs of women that you would like to take on at some of these events?
Don't be afraid
or
to
you'd
cut a
like to
promo.
see, or do you have any matches you'd like to get back? Cut promos.
Not necessarily call outs, but I do think that there's some really cool matchups in this area. I think like especially with the tag team events, because we have such a wealth of talent in like the female community, with the team events in particular, you can get some pretty wild cards going. I think because it's like 3 versus 3 with people like tagging in, tagging out, you get a really explosive dynamic style of jiu-jitsu that you don't often see. There isn't really room to stall, especially like I believe in NGA, it was like, I think that was like in the bowl as well, where they had the walls.
It was in the pit, yeah.
Yeah, it was in the pit. So like, you don't really get a lot of resets. So it just ends up being really, really exciting. A little bit chaotic, a little bit pro wrestling-esque, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for the sport.
Well, since you don't have any call outs, Kate, do you have any matchups you'd like to see? So it doesn't have people you want to go against, but are there matchups that you would like to like see or watch at a event? It's really just an opportunity to shout out people in our area that are great grapplers. Yeah. If not, it's okay. We'll move on.
That's a blue belt versus a brown belt. That might be him now.
Well, you guys can think on it while we talk through some other topics. For this, I understand it's a sensitive topic, so feel free to speak about as little or as much, or we can cut as much. Oh, did you think of one? Before we get into it, here we go.
Okay, so as of last weekend, Gwen from Kogayan Academy was competing at the light featherweight, and I know that our good friend Natalie is also planning on competing at the light featherweight.
They're both blue belts.
They're both blue belts. I think either a gi or a no gi matchup would be really great for the two of them. I know that Gwen, I think, prefers the gi and Natalie prefers no gi, so it could be fun to do a little bit of both.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Have them do both divisions.
Oh, that could be cool.
I like it.
Do you want to go against Jonesy Jones again after that like amazing match to a draw?
Yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun. And she also I'm really glad that she finally got her purple belt because frankly, we train, in addition to having competed against each other a few times before, we also do train together regularly. And frankly, she felt like a purple belt to me long before she actually got her purple belt. She's incredibly physically talented. She has a wrestling background. She learns jiu-jitsu really, really quickly. Every time I've either trained with her or competed against her, she's been tougher and tougher to deal with. And I mean that in the best possible way. She's a great challenge. So yeah, I would love to compete against her again. Even like the matches where we draw, I feel like it's always exciting for me and I feel like I always get something out of it. I hope that she feels the same way. And yeah, I think we've also both made improvements on our leg lock game since that NGA match where we were kind of just stuck in 50-50, just constantly scrambling for entanglements, but not quite able to get the bite on either end. But I think that we would be a little bit more technical in the shootout now that we both had a chance to kind of refine our games. But yeah, no, I would absolutely love to compete against Jones again. I think she's fantastic.
All right. Are you guys ready to step into current events?
Might as well.
It doesn't have to be specific to what we can use what has been going on as examples, but we don't have to specifically harp on and whatever. But what do you guys think of the prevalence, I guess? Is that a good word for it, Scott?
Well, it depends on what you're going to say. Let's hear it.
Of the sexual misconduct within jiu-jitsu, and does that make you more skeptical of going to train places? I don't need you guys to talk about anything sensitive to yourselves. That's not important, just mainly broad spectrum about jujitsu as a whole, if you are comfortable with it. Otherwise, we can cut it. It doesn't matter to me. But
I would say that when I'm traveling, I do enjoy going to new gyms, but I'm a lot more reliant on recommendations from friends now than I think I would have been in the past. Like, I would like to know that when I show up somewhere, that there's someone I know personally who can vouch for them and tell me it's a safe place. There's going to be people there who they trust, who I should be able to trust.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Like, I mean, I do my due diligence anyway, like before going to like a new fitness facility of any kind, just to make sure that the place is legit. But I think especially in jujitsu, it's a full contact sport. It is a combat sport. So like in particular, like if I have a personal connection to a spot that I'm visiting, if there's something that like my coach, teammate, training partner can vouch for, I do just feel a lot more comfortable with that. So would agree with Kate wholeheartedly on that front.
I'm leaving a gap so that I can have an easy place to kind of continue. So right now, right, it's a little, at this point, a little bit old in terms of news cycle, but right, there's a lot of the grooming allegations and things like that out of Atos, as well as, a few other places, but that's the most prominent example as of right now. How do you think organizations should be handling these allegations? And how do you think organizations can, honestly, do better about, controlling or, I don't know, vetting the people that they're putting in places of power to help make these places safer places to train?
I'd say having leaders looking at each other would probably be a good place to start. There's going to be a power dynamic between the coaches, the owners, and the students. But if you have leaders seeing what the others are doing, keeping eyes on their coaches, coaches keeping eyes on each other and making sure that everything is staying, in check and safe, they're the ones who are going to have the most weight to their words if they speak out. And at the same time, they should be open and approachable for any student to come up to them and be able to voice their concerns. And they should be creating an environment where the students feel comfortable and safe doing that they're not going to get retaliated against, that they're not going to get forced out for speaking about their experience. But then being in that position of power, they are the ones who should then be bringing that to the other people at the top level.
Yeah, no, I think like that top-down dynamic is huge. And we kind of talked about that earlier in another context as well, where you learn, you do just know a lot about the culture of a room based on what the leadership is like. And like the example is set by the guy or girl at the head of the room, right? So like if your black belt professor, gym owner is trying to sleep with every woman who walks through the door, that kind of tells the rest of the staff that that's okay behavior to engage in, right? That's the example that's being set. I do think that like, yes, jujitsu is recreational. Most people going into a commercial gym aren't like doing it for a living, but in some ways it would benefit from being treated a little bit like a workplace where it's like, yes, workplace romances are fine. They happen, but they are handled professionally and they are handled with an eye toward the potential consequences of a fallout, right? So like, for example, if you are a black belt instructor and you want to date one of your students, like it's kind of like a manager deciding to date one of their employees or somebody who has been assigned to their team. Like there's a world where you can make it work and where you can navigate that power dynamic. But because jujitsu, despite being a hobby for most people, it is so hierarchical. And because there is that added dynamic of like high amounts of physical contact, it's just something that I think should be handled carefully, and with like very open communication to everyone involved. And again, just kind of treat it like the same way you would treat like an office romance, essentially, where everyone's above board, people know what's going on, you're not trying to hide anything from anyone. And I think like that's never going to like negate all potential for drama, because we're human beings and drama is inevitable in every sphere of life, not just jujitsu. But it will at the very least, I think, kind of cut back on some of the more explosive scandals that come out of these situations.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yes.
you alluded to, you made a point which I wholly agree with insofar as the thread of sharing honest feedback. We'll say up the chain, because I think that's kind of at the core of my question. But I want to know, in general, you can be general or specific in this, but how would you rate like the challenge or the difficulty that someone might, and it could be from your experience, if you've heard from other people, like, I'd like to know what the psychology is, the difficulty it is to actually do that. Because I think, just to give a little context, I've had people relatively recently who have given me very honest feedback, which I've always wanted honest feedback. This stuff is so important to know, whether it's this subject matter or other subject matters. If you're leading a culture, leading a community, you have to know as much as possible about like the quality, the integrity of the group, what kind of environment under your nose is kind of developing. So I think that stuff is critically important. And while like I said, in my life, having some changes, I've had some people give me some very open feedback that I was like, well, this is really nice to know. Why didn't you tell me 6 months ago? It's and to me, I ask myself, I'm like, crap, man, why wasn't this person comfortable telling me that? And I think there's certain embedded maybe challenges that people have with saying, oh, I just don't want to make I've had some people say that I didn't want to be the cause of a problem. Like, well, it's not a problem. It could be a big problem, or it could be not that much of a problem if we have a conversation, we kind of get to the bottom of what's going on. But does that make sense? I would love to know your thoughts, like honest thoughts on that, kind of broaching a subject that you're not sure about with someone in a leadership position.
Yeah. So Andrea's actually been one of my coaches for a hot second now. And one of the first people that I will go to field is this something I actually need to be concerned about, something I actually need to say more about? Having a friend and coach who's been around a little bit longer and talking to them of, is this something that actually needs to be addressed? And if so, can you help me get it in the ears of the right people, as opposed to, I just need to vent about this because it's bothering me, but it's something that I'm going to deal with myself.
Can I ask a follow-up on that, Kate?
Yeah.
Good. Very interesting response too, because I'm curious, how much of that is you're still kind of like figuring out the culture too? Like, is that right to say? Like, you're sort of like, is this 100%. A thing or is this not a thing?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It goes back a little bit to what we were saying earlier about picking your right training partners, especially when it comes to the injury front. We've all been injured, but if I'm drilling in class and somebody's going super light, easy, telling me they're injured, and then we hop into the live roll and they're going 100%, I've gone up to Andrea after class and go, did you see that? Am I crazy?
Right.
Is this something is this a pattern that you see with other people that it needs to be addressed with them? Or is this something that I need to deal with on my own? Maybe they're just not the right training partner for me.
Got it.
That's fine. But then there are other things that I might bring up that definitely should be addressed, on a higher level. Okay. Hey, we're seeing an issue where there's a number of people who don't really know how to flow roll. And so people are getting hurt in the first 3 to 5 minutes of class.
Right.
Hey, I rolled with more than one person this week who absolutely reeked. Things that should get moved up as opposed to being dealt with slightly further down the line.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I am deeply honored that you feel comfortable talking to me candidly about these things. I'm really glad that we've cultivated that relationship. But yeah, I think like a lot of it is kind of like on us. Like, I'm a brown belt now, I'm a coach. But like, I think Scott would agree with me on this, Mike, as well, as people who have been leaders in their gyms for quite some time. It's also kind of on us to like cultivate an environment where like students and lower belts feel comfortable coming to us with those problems. So I do try to invite it as much as I can. Like, where I make a point of saying after every class, like, hey, if you have questions about anything, if you're uncomfortable with anything, please, like, I am available to you within reason. And like, I'll also, even after I roll with people, I'll like check in with them sometimes, be like, hey, was that okay? Like, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about like the intensity, where it's like, hey, like, was that okay? Do you want me to give you a different look? Do you want me to go harder? Do you want me to go lighter? And I also try to make it clear that people are allowed to say no to me. Just because I outrank them doesn't mean that I dictate how they train, right? Where it's like, I've had people like apologize to me for like turning down a role and try to like give all these explanations, be like, I'm so sorry, I didn't want to offend you, but like I have like this, that, and the other thing. I told this person. I'm like, you don't owe me an explanation. You can just say I won't be offended. It is okay. And I think it is important to cultivate that culture of like, you are allowed to say no to people, even if they outrank you, even if they're your instructor. You can just respectfully like turn down a request to roll or spar or drill or do anything that you're uncomfortable doing with that person.
And on creating an environment where your students feel comfortable doing that, I think one of the biggest barriers to giving your feedback to coaches is having the time and space to talk to them one-on-one. Because there is the time after a class where they might invite you to say, chat, look at a drill, something like that. But there's frequently a lot of other people around. And if you are wanting to address an issue a little bit more privately, it's a little hard to find that space sometimes. You might be able to go up to them and say, hey, can we, chat privately? Can we grab a minute outside? Can we meet up for a longer period of time later this week? But being able to actually find that time at the level of importance that you feel it is one of the bigger barriers.
Yeah, I don't deal with a lot of women in my classes, but so this is more of a broad spectrum general thing. But yeah, like making a point to I try to make a point to kind of break down the hierarchy, like outside of just the general, like I'm teaching right now, please just listen while I teach, and after that do whatever, if you want to just respect class time. But outside of that, it's like, dude, I'm just another person. I think that's a really important thing, because I think that the hierarchy in loyalty tends to be one of it's a great thing about the sport, like the loyalty aspect, the discipline, the shared experience, right? That kind of builds that hierarchy, right? But I think the hierarchy is one of the biggest barriers to creating like a safe space within the gym, right? Like that comfortable, safe space that, like, if you don't balance the time to use the hierarchy and the time not to, and it starts to bleed into real life, is when that becomes a dangerous like thing. And I think that, this is just outside looking in, obviously, but I think that's a big aspect of what's creating these like areas where these like really terrible things happen inside jiu-jitsu gyms. Whether that's physical abuse, emotional abuse, grooming, like all that stuff. And the reason that it goes like uncontrolled or like unchecked is because of that like weird loyalty that we get to the person that gave us a belt, right? Like the person who tied a belt around our waist. And sometimes that loyalty goes deeper than that, but being unwilling to challenge those people because of belt rank becomes dangerous. And it gets into like when we were talking about the cult episode, right? Like that also leads to that cult behavior. So I think that's good that you guys bring that up.
I think there's you both mentioned it. There's like a theme and a value of the quality of leadership that, to your point, Michael, I'd love to hear everyone's feedback on this if you have something to respond to, but I don't see this a lot, but I've seen it plenty of times. I still see it sometimes. There's a certain a leader or a set of leaders kind of sets it. It ultimately comes from a leader, right? Because this stuff is hierarchical. Just it can't not be. But if there's like a fragility, the word that comes to mind for me is fragility. But if the person who's in that leadership position sets a tone of "I can't be questioned," don't share feedback. To me, that conveys fragility to me when I hear that, which is a weakness.
Insecurity.
Yeah, it's a weakness. It's like that's not a posture that an authentic leader should have in general. Nonetheless, that can repel the impulses that a person might have to say, I don't know how this person is going to respond, and therefore I guess I'll keep my mouth shut. So I'm scared of what this guy's going to do or what this lady's going to do. That, in my opinion, like an authentic, legitimate, sincere person a leader trying to put their best foot forward. These people are people that have growth. Even leaders need to continually work on that skill because it is a skill and you can work on it. have to. I mean, I think it's critical to demonstrate that. Like, this is why I took to heart that some of the feedback that I was getting is like, crap, man, I wish you guys would have. I unfortunately feel like maybe I didn't do my job to signal to these people that I can have that conversation. So anyways, it's something I think about. But I think and that's something I will earnestly continue to work on. Because I like intel. I want all intel. You manage it, you filter it. All intel's not created equal, but you have to be open to feedback. And it's actually the core, it's the root of the job, is to respond to your marketplace and say, are these people receiving value? Do they have critiques? Like, if you're not doing that, you're not doing your job, in my opinion. It's the simplest thing. Doesn't mean it's easy. It's simple, however. So, I don't know. What do you guys think of that? I said a lot.
Yeah, you have to be open to feedback. That's what it all boils down to, is if you're being prescriptive about what needs to be done and exactly how it needs to be done with no flexibility, there's not a big group of people that's likely going to work for. Everyone's going to learn differently. Everyone has different goals. Everyone has different reasons that they do this, and you need to be open to all of them.
Yeah. And I feel like it's also important to highlight that it isn't enough to just like say the words, right? Be like, hey, of course I'm open to feedback, because your actions tell a deeper story, right? So if you like, plenty of gym owners or coaches will be like, oh, of course I'm open to my students' feedback. But then if they receive any negative criticism at all, suddenly there's all this passive aggressive behavior. They're icing out students. They're retaliating. They're being like really weird about it. So like, you can't accept that either, right? If you say that you are open to feedback, that means all feedback, positive or negative. And if you receive negative feedback, like, yeah, that might sting a little, but you kind of have to swallow that and put on your big boy pants and like, and kind of ask yourself, look inward and be like, okay, why am I receiving this feedback? Is there something real here that can be addressed? And most importantly, even if you don't agree with that feedback, don't take it out on the student. Like, don't let your ego kind of like poison the well and create this toxicity, because that says more about you than it does about the student that criticized you, in my opinion.
Yeah, as the person receiving the feedback, right, you kind of get one chance to receive, for people to like be willing to talk to you. Once you lash back out, like once it becomes not a conversation and like you put up your defensive barriers, you lash out at that person when they give you feedback, it doesn't make anybody, because they're going to tell everyone else, like, yeah, like I went to talk to him about this and he just snapped at me, right? So like I guess sometimes you just have to be willing to listen in the moment. You don't have to give them a rebuttal or an explanation, right? They give you the feedback, you just accept it, you think about it, and then you can come back with an answer later if you don't have like the ability to give a measured response, right? So yeah, I think it's a really good point.
My last thing too is that this is my attitude towards like anonymous or not anonymous information, but most people aren't going to say something. And so for me, I have this like iceberg analogy where it's like if one or two people tell me something, or three or four, I'm number one, that's a pattern. But someone tells you something, I'm of the opinion, like tip of the iceberg, that's one that's poking above the water. There's 10x the amount of people who are thinking the same thing who haven't said anything. So that's where my mind goes. I try to like triangle. If I hear something, I'm like, you know what? I can kind of see that. That to me, I'm like, definitely an iceberg thing going on here. If I hear something, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, okay, I'm listening, but like, I try to triangulate things I can't put my finger on. So I usually go to trusted sources at differing degrees and sort of seek out like validation. Like, what do you think? Is this valid, or is this one person's kind of got a perspective that's specific to them? This stuff is important, man. It's very important.
And I'll bring it back around to being part of the actual gym community. Is there are a lot of people still who are not comfortable with approaching the coaches, but there are some of us who are, like, have made a good bond with our coaches and are willing to go talk to them. So as teammates, as members of the gym, we should also be talking to our teammates and finding out if there's anything that they want to say but aren't comfortable saying. I've had people come to me and I'll pass that information right along, that, might not be something I am in full alignment with, but I'm more comfortable talking to the coaches. So I will absolutely pass that on because it's important that they get that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's huge. I think, like, again, there's like this trickle down effect where it's like, it's not just about the people at the tippity top. They set the example, but like, I think it's also important to like kind of cultivate the people who are sort of in the middle, like your blues, your purple belts, folks who have been around for a while and kind of know the mat culture. And like, maybe they aren't coaches, maybe they aren't gym owners, but they can take kind of like a leadership role in their own right within the community. And often those folks are a little bit more approachable than the head honcho on the mat, right? And like, this is maybe an extreme example, but I remember, I think when I was fairly new to DMA, I came in as a blue belt. This was either when I was late in blue belt or early in purple belt. I had a female teammate come up to me and she was like, hey, I had this weird roll with the guy who like, he kind of like freaked out on me. He hit me in the face. I can't tell if it was on purpose or not, but like it made me really uncomfortable. I stopped the roll. Like, do I say anything about this? Like, is this normal? Because this was like a new white belt too. And I was like, who was it? She told me. I knew that the guy had a history of being kind of a weirdo in roles, had gotten unnecessarily aggressive with several other members. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have, for safety reasons, I am going to have to send this up the ladder, right? Like I am going to have to report this because like, you know, you did the right thing. You stopped the roll. You're safe, but I can't guarantee that this guy isn't going to do this to somebody else. And now, like, it isn't just one anecdote. This is a pattern of behavior that's been observed, right? So I go and I talk to some of the black belts at DMM. I'm like, hey, this is what happened. This is what this person told me. And so, like, it was as a result, like, this person did ultimately end up getting kicked out because it is not okay to regularly, violently assault your training partners without their consent. But it was one of those things, right? Where it's like, if you're new and like, you know, you haven't really been exposed to full contact combat sports before, you might not necessarily know what is and isn't normalized. And you might be like a little bit shy about going directly to your coach or directly to the gym owner to ask. And it can be helpful to have somebody who's kind of like a big sister, big brother on the mat, who's like your local friendly blue belt, purple belt, and just be like, hey, this happened. It was kind of weird. Should I like talk to the coach about that? Or am I being a drama queen? And they can either be like, yeah, like, you know, it's like, you know, somebody getting a little spazzy is a little normal. Like it's whatever. Or they can be like, no, nobody should be backhanding you in the middle of a roll. That's not okay. We're not playing combat jujitsu here. So I think like having those go-betweens can be a really helpful resource.
Any other closing remarks, ladies?
I'll say one thing to that. I'm not a lady, but I'll say one thing to that. That I've been saying this for years, but I believe it's true. Like if you're doing a good job at setting a culture in the community, and the communities, that's the business. That's the core of the job is community when you're in a leadership position. If you do it right, I like this analogy of like calling the community an immune system. We're like good people, good eyes on the mat at every level, low, medium, high. You'll catch things like that. And if the immune system's healthy, that stuff gets handled. You know, like white blood cells around an infection, take care of it, gets removed, and then you just preserve the integrity of the community, the immune system for the long term. But it's work. It just has to be done.
Well, yeah, everyone has to look out for each other, right? Like if you're not looking out for each other on the mats, it makes a huge difference in terms of safety on the mats.
You allow an infection to metastasize and then you get cancer.
Yeah, and hopefully the cancer removes itself or it gets cut out.
Sometimes you gotta, I call it the job system. Sometimes you just gotta take out the trash.
Yeah.
Take out the trash. Yeah, dude, like it's part of the job. Just taking out the trash.
Got to exercise the demons, remove the toxins,
exercise the demons, yeah.
Cut out the cancer.
Yeah.
Any closing remarks about being a woman in jiu-jitsu or yeah? Okay.
Talk to each other and wash your damn gi.
Yeah, I don't think I can say it better than Kate. Yeah, definitely just like, yeah, look out for each other. Like, you know, having wonderful male teammates is one thing, but as girls, we also got to look out for each other, train with each other, push each other, be good teammates, be good training partners, build up the community. And yes, please wash your gear. I beg of you.
I beg of you.
This has been Fighters Drinking Coffee, guys. Thank you to Kate and Andrea for being on yet another episode. They're going to be on a few here. We have a long drive. This has been more road rants. You can go check out the Patreon, guys. That's a big one for supporting the show. Patreon.com/Fighters Drinking Coffee podcast. as well, you can go check out our boy Asim at Nova Barbell Club. We've got a little promo for you guys. We've got I Love Coffee is the code that you can use. It'll get you 50% off your first month of training with him. So we've ranted about it. He's who we use for all of our strength and conditioning needs. He's also really great when it comes to the support around the events. He's really good at answering questions and stuff like that as well. Definitely get on the team. All 4 of us here in the car are NVBC athletes. So check them out. Rate, review, tell a friend to listen to the show as well, guys. Keep growing the community, just like we talked about on the show. It's all about community aspect here. So thanks, guys. Love you. Bye.